So I'm really excited to have somebody that I've actually been working with since the beginning of my political career, Florida politics. Ida Eskamani. We go way back to working in the Florida House together. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you for having me, Natasha. Yeah, I feel like we've got some serious trauma bonds, girl. So being in the trenches for a long time
Girl.
together. So it's great to share this
Yes,
virtual space with you.
absolutely. So if you could just sort of give us a background about your experience. I mean, I know for me, you're everywhere, but just tell us about yourself and your work in Florida politics overall, if you can.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, like I said, my name is Ida Eskamani. Born and raised in Orlando, Florida, daughter of immigrants from Iran, working class parents. So I'm a lifelong Floridian. And for the last 10 plus years, I've been working in Florida politics. I started as a student organizer. I've worked for groups like Equality Florida, and in other social justice organizations. And in the last like 6 years, I've been on the ground in the Florida Capitol. 2 years as legislative aide, 4 years as an advocate, and I just continued to work, really trying to push the people's agenda in the state capitol, which a lot of times is a lot of fights, and you're trying to stop bad things from happening. But sometimes we've had some wins too on some really important issues. But it takes a lot of people power. I always say our opponents, the far right, the corporate donors, they're trying to buy what we are building, but
Yep.
it's priceless, right? But we got to keep building people power. So that's the quick and dirty of, the last 10 plus years of, blood, sweat, and a lot of tears in the state of
Yeah.
Florida.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I know for me, like, I just feel like you're everywhere. I feel like if it's anything to do with specifically like progressive policies, ideas, I feel like Ida's got, I was gonna say the Escamanis, we can get into that in a second, but I feel like you all, just have your hand in everything. I mean, I feel like whether it's on a Zoom or emails or like a summary of like the bills that are moving, that kind of thing. I mean, you're just kind of everywhere. And then that leads me to the fact that you might actually seem like you're everywhere because you also have a twin sister.
I have
So
a
people might
double.
recognize, right, there are two of you somehow. I don't know how Florida got blessed with the both of you, but can you tell us a little bit about your sister too?
Absolutely. And that's too kind. And I always forget to mention that I have a twin sister because for me, that's just my life. That's, it's just my day to
Right.
day. But I know it's a big thing, especially because she is representative Anna V. Eskamani, a people's champion representing the Orlando area. We're roommates as well. We're best friends, soulmates. I think we are everything to each other. And yeah, she's my representative, and she's an incredible champion for everyday people. And I feel very fortunate to have her representing me and to call her my twin. And so, yes, when you are often seeing double, because there are indeed two of us.
I think that's the only way you guys get as much done as you do is it takes two. But even
It takes
individually,
a lot of us, 100%. I mean, it's a lot of emotional support for each other.
I
And
bet.
it's funny. Growing up, in high school, we were in high school theater together. In college, we were president and vice president of the College Democrats. So we're still roommates in our 30s. So we are definitely just really close and just partners in this work. And I really appreciate those really kind remarks around just the movement and like the progressive work in Florida. I have felt that it is so important for everyone to be connected because sometimes the magic that comes from just a relationship and
Mhm.
what that can like build is so important. And particularly as our opponents, the far right, corporations, they're always trying to divide and conquer us. And so it's
Yep.
really important that we as a movement, we as people stand together, right? And see that our fights are interconnected. And so I see myself often as just that connector.
Yep.
And then I can just like the magic just happens. So I appreciate that and always sharing countless Zooms with you and so forth.
Yeah. So let's get into the nitty-gritty. Let's talk budget, a big scary word. But
Mhm.
recently there was a press conference where folks were talking about demanding a people's budget or a people's agenda from the legislature. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Yeah. The People's Budget Campaign is a really exciting effort in Florida. And it's all about putting people in charge of how the state spends your money. If I could bring us up to like a bird's eye view a little bit, right? The only
Yeah.
constitutional responsibility of the Florida legislature is to pass a budget. And that is your tax dollars. That is a lot of federal dollars, which are still your tax dollars, right?
Yep.
And it's over $100 billion.
Wow.
And the state, yeah, it's a lot of money. And actually, the budget's gotten bigger and bigger in Florida over the last few years. So we're in one of the biggest budgets we've ever had. COVID relief dollars from the federal government were so critical to keeping the state afloat when we saw massive losses in sales tax, because the state of Florida disproportionately relies on sales tax over corporate income tax. And that's by design, because they
Mhm.
disproportionately, it's all by design, because who is out here writing the laws in the Florida Capitol? It's corporate donors. And so they
Okay.
always write laws. The tax code serves the corporate class over the working class. And so Floridians disproportionately pay more in taxes than corporations do and billionaires do in Florida. And particularly, like, the most low income folks, which is disproportionate people of color, carry more
Mhm.
of the tax burden in Florida than the richest people who live in this state, right? And so it's all by design. And this is our money that we should have a say in how we spend it. And
Yeah.
so the People's Budget campaign is really all about that. It's about bringing people into the policy and budget making process, um, and really sort of illuminating to the fact that, but the budget, to your point, is like inherently complicated. It's because it's not
Yeah.
written for or by us, right? So we try to. The whole effort is around, teaching folks about how your state government is spending your money, giving you a say in how those dollars are spent.
Mhm.
And I always say in politics, there's a lot of nuances, right? There's different personalities, there's rumors, there's like, wonky, all this stuff, right? All this stuff that can just like be really overwhelming and can like add a lot of gray area to stuff. But money's pretty cut and clear. Like, that is
Can
a
be.
value statement. That is your priorities. And so when you really look at how the state is spending money, it doesn't matter about partisanship. Like, none of that matters. It's pretty clear where they stand. Who do they want to invest in? Who do your state leaders care about? Is it corporate donors or is it people? It's right
Mm.
there in the budget. So the budget is just such a really powerful tool, not only to invest in our communities so that everyone has the opportunity to thrive in this state, but also to, like, put the curtain back and really show like who your state is working for.
Yeah, no, it's about how we invest our money, like what our values are, like you said. And I remember when I first started working, in the political process, because I come from education before coming into politics, and one of my jobs was to analyze this budget, right? And I was just sort of surprised at just how much money goes into so many different things I didn't even know were paid for by our tax dollars. But I mean, a lot of folks don't realize things like the fact that it's got to be done every year. And it's, how our schools are funded, whether or not, college students in Florida will qualify for Bright Futures. They can say that Bright Futures is available, but if they don't fund it in the budget, then they're going to go, oh, we're out of money. Sorry. Guess you're not getting Bright Futures this year. Like, just stuff that
Exactly,
I
exactly.
I was like, how is that even a thing? So, and to your point, this is the one mandatory thing that these folks want to do. And I gotta be honest with you, can they just come here and only do the budget? I don't need them to be doing all these laws.
They do enough damage. Like, can we just do
They're
the
doing
budget
too
and go
much.
home? I totally agree.
They have here doing too much. Not to mention the they is like the same people have been in charge for like more than 20 years. So you would think by now they were happy with the laws they've already made, but now they're like, oh, we got to fix all these
No.
problems that you guessed it, we created 10, 20 years ago. So anyway, we'll get into that. Okay. Well, I
Oh no,
appreciate
don't.
you.
Yeah, do not get me started.
I appreciate you explaining the budget. So it's our money. It's where our money goes to provide us the services. And it's interesting because you also mentioned the tax burden portion. And I think about people that talk to me, so military background, a lot of people I know out of state, and they're like, oh, Florida's low tax. It's so great. No income tax. But like you said, because it's with the sales taxes, if you have less money to work with, the proportion of what you have, you end up spending on your necessities and, other things that are taxed. And so you end up giving more. Plus, the loopholes, all the corporate giveaway loopholes and stuff,
100%.
right?
Right. Exactly. Oh no, you named it. So, and data proves this. We're not just saying it, right? And this is one of my like major pet peeves with the Florida legislature and the folks in charge is that they put out a lot of stuff where the facts don't line up with any of it, right?
Hmm.
So, for example, they say, "Oh, well, sales tax, mostly tourists pay that, not Floridians." False. Like the data shows it's so false. Like everyday people who live here are disproportionately paying sales tax and are paying like our whole budget. It's not tourism. Like that's such a lie. And to your point, there's so many corporate tax giveaways in the form of a lot of policy tricks. There's loopholes, there's incentives, there's subsidies, there's breaks, there's grants. Like there are so many legal ways that corporations are not paying the taxes they owe because those corporations wrote the tax code that the leaders in charge of the state of Florida have passed, right? Over a long time. If I could give like a quick little history, Governor
Yeah.
Ruben Askew, as Democratic governor in the 70s, he ran on a platform to create a corporate income tax in Florida. And it was a ballot initiative that he ran because the legislature wouldn't do it. And so the voters, so he ran on a campaign to pass a corporate income tax in Florida. All the big corporations, like Winn-Dixie at the time was one of the most powerful corporations in Florida, all opposed it. A lot of the same special interests that we fight today, the Associated Industries of Florida that represents all the big corporations in the state, the Florida Chamber of Commerce, same thing. These are the front groups that corporations pay into to do the dirty work for them so that their logos and their brands are not like in the Capitol, but like their money is, right? And so a
That's
lot of
clever.
those same entities, oh yes, oh my goodness, yes, they know exactly what they're doing, right? And so a lot of these same entities are the ones that fought the corporate income tax fight in Florida in the 70s. And even despite that, the governor at the time, Ruben Askew, Democratic governor from the Panhandle, he led a ballot initiative campaign to get it on the ballot. And it passed overwhelmingly. I forget the exact numbers, but like every county supported it. It was just overwhelmingly popular. And that's why we even have a corporate income tax in Florida of 5.5%. But in the last like few years, the legislature has they temporarily cut the corporate income tax rate. It's written in a way where 99% of companies don't pay it at all. And the ones that do pay it, it's a secret. We don't know who pays or how much. And they're always trying to evade it too. We had a big win last session when they wanted to basically extend the cut. Because this is, I could go on as you can tell, but I'll say this is one thing corporations do a lot is they will pass a temporary tax break. And then once it's going to expire, they'll come out and say, well, you can't raise taxes on us. Like, and then, heaven forbid. And so it gets extended. So every time there's like a temporary tax break, it's always permanent. That's their goal, right? But we were able to organize like working people, students, renters, like we were able to organize last session and we stopped the bill from passing. And so we were able to restore Florida's already very low and like evasive corporate income tax rate back to the percent of 5.5%. But again, it's still so few pay it while disproportionately Floridians. And it's always working class and people of color that disproportionately pay and carry the burden of taxes in Florida. And again, to your point, so they say it's a low tax state, but when you do the data, it's the people, it's working class folks who pay more than billionaires and corporations. And the things that we need, like healthcare, education, childcare, housing, that end up being a disproportionate part of our budgets as like everyday people versus corporations and billionaires, right? It leads to that we are spending a lot of money on stuff that our state should be investing in so that we all have access. Because this is about economic freedom and opportunity to flourish in this state. And we all have a right to it, especially when it's our tax dollars that we are paying into the state to support us. But instead, it's going as things that are actually working against our freedoms.
Yeah. The gaslighting. It's insane. Like, it's my money.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes.
I
yes,
deserve
exactly.
fully funded schools. Like, we're already paying
exactly.
for it. Like, also,
right. 100%.
Corporations, we're paying you like all kinds of money for the products you're selling us, and you're coming to our state and using up our resources. and you're not
Yep.
paying to offset that, like draining up our water and plowing down our
Exactly. And also paying poverty wages to their workers.
yeah,
It's
and they're not paying
all,
nobody
it's just
nothing.
so, it's so outrageous. Like, just the robbery. They're robbing us, you know? Like, this is like, we're being robbed. Like,
Yes,
so it's so
yes,
real. Like, these corporations that are buying out politicians to pass laws and make them more money are also paying their workers terrible wages, not providing healthcare coverage to their workers. They
yeah,
are polluting our waters, polluting our air, all for profit, where we are paying the price.
right. All right. So I feel like we could continue to talk about the budget and taxes and
Yeah.
that kind of thing, but we also have folks that are listening that maybe like that's not their jam. I don't know why, because we all have to deal with money, but it's fine. Everybody's different. So what about actual policies? One of the things that I saw yesterday, HB 999, which is like a
Yep.
bill that's gonna make it, from what I understand, like banning certain like college majors from people being able to choose whatever
Yes.
major, to potentially getting rid of like multicultural student organizations on campuses and things like that. But if you could just kind of briefly, however briefly, sort of talk to us about what's
Yeah.
happening with educational policy this session.
100%. Well, so House Bill 999 is the bill you're talking about, that moved through committee yesterday. And over, I mean, it felt like over 100 people. The committee room was packed with people opposing. There was actually no one who testified in support. The James Madison Institute, which is a far-right think tank that's funded by far-right billionaires, waved in support, couldn't even go out and argue about the benefits of this policy. So
Oh, wow.
overwhelmingly folks opposed it, and it still passed on a party line vote. And that's, the Florida legislature is a twilight zone. It does not line up with
Yeah,
anything people want, right? And then when
right.
people come out, they don't, they limit debate to 45 seconds. Like, you took
How?
a day off of work, you drove hours to be there, you're sitting in this room, and the chair tells you you have 45 seconds to testify about why you oppose
That's
this bill,
crazy.
and they're still going to vote on a party line vote. And I think that can let people come to the conclusion that like your voice doesn't matter. And I have to say, no, it does. Like, the fact that they put all these roadblocks is because they're scared of us. So it's really
Yep.
important that we show up and make our voices heard, because they do this because they want to disenchant us to think like our voice doesn't matter, but it
Right.
does. If our voice didn't matter, they wouldn't work this hard to make it so hard for us to have a say, right?
Yeah.
So come out and turn out. And so it was really beautiful to see so many folks come out. And the bill, in a nutshell, to your point, it censors academic freedom. It won't.
Mhm.
There's certain degrees like around gender studies, women's studies, Black history, all these things that they will basically, the state is mandating you cannot teach in public colleges and universities.
That's
It
wild.
targets professors around tenure and free speech as well, and it's just, in a lot of ways, these bills are just are giveaways to far right donors, like, because they're basically they're degrading our education system to the benefit of the few. And we're seeing the same thing on public education. House Bill 1 is a massive universal voucher bill, is what they call it, basically privatizing public education and giving public funded vouchers, taxpayer dollars, to millionaires and billionaires to send their kids to private schools. And it's taking money away from public schools. And so, yeah, and like, I know we were just talking about like budgets and money, and right, and
Yeah, but
I
it's all connected.
exactly, you finished my sentence for me. It's all connected.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, it's all connected, and and so all these fights are really about enriching the few with public dollars. So they're taking money out of public schools, out of public universities, out of public K through 12, right? And they're moving it into these like private, far right ideological schools that are also
Mhm.
anti-LGBTQ. They are
Right.
not teaching real history. They're not teaching Black history. They're not teaching about the structural systemic issues that we want to dismantle, because they want to create a population of Floridians that are uneducated and don't have economic opportunities. And so a
Right.
lot of it is back to like economic justice, and racial justice is an economic justice fight. Economic justice is a racial justice fight. They're all connected. And when you
Mhm.
really look at a lot of these policies that the state is pushing around education, is specifically removing opportunities for success for Black and brown people, for women, for working class people, for LGBTQ people, for people with disabilities. Like, it's targeting us and our opportunity to succeed. I, as a daughter of working class immigrants from Iran, could not have gone to college without bright futures. And I'm here now fighting this system because I studied political science and sociology. And I realized that this is rigged against us. And like, we have to fight and dismantle it. This is what they don't want us to learn. They don't want us to learn this. They want to, because then they'll fix it. And they disproportionately, exactly. And that'll put them out of power. And so it's like, it's all there, right? It's very transparent. And I think I had the most like aha moment recently reading these bills when they are specifically targeting job fairs that center like diversity, equity, and inclusion. And they're targeting merit-based scholarships that focus on working class families, like immigrant families and people of color. And, you know, we like people not of means are the folks most impacted by this. Even this House Bill 999, a lot of these classes can still be taught in private universities, just not in public universities.
Interesting.
And so even then, the class war, like, so if you can afford a private school, you'll get everything you want. But if you have to go to a public university, you can't. And so that's why I've been saying this over and over again. Every single culture war is a class war. Because if you are of means, you can leave the state and get an education. You can get an abortion. You can get gender affirming care. Like, you can go and get what you want. But if you are working in middle class, you are here and you cannot leave and get access to these things that are our rights, and it's our money. So yeah, anyway, I could go off, but that's the other piece on, well, if I could talk a little bit more about education too, in a sense, like, so House Bill 1 is this big privatization bill, $4 billion of our tax dollars going to private schools that are unaccountable, that can discriminate against LGBTQ kids, against kids with disabilities, do not have to provide the basic education that our kids deserve. And then House Bill 999 is this big higher ed bill that just dismantles higher education in Florida for public universities. But you're also seeing these bills that target workers' ability to organize. Those are teachers and educational support staff, bus drivers, custodians. Like, so it's dismantling the power of workers to demand fair wages and benefits who work for schools and for other like public institutions, right? So you're seeing like this anti-worker agenda that's targeting educational staff, professors, teachers, custodians, bus drivers. Then you're seeing these bills that make school board elections partisan. Then you're seeing the attack on Black history in our schools. Then you're seeing the attack on LGBTQ kids in our schools. You're seeing the fight on sex ed in our schools. You're seeing stuff around immigrant children, targeting immigrant children and their opportunities. And it could be very easy to see all these things as individual fights. But when you follow the money, it's funded by the same far-right billionaires. And it's the same goal, which is to dismantle education, which is economic opportunity, right? Like, as a daughter of immigrants, that was what I always knew. If you study, if you focus, your dreams are a reality, right?
Exactly.
And so when you take away economic opportunity, you're taking away like economic prosperity. You're taking away like any opportunity to stop a cycle of poverty in your family, right? It's targeting our economic prosperity because that is a threat to the status quo. Because when we can pay our bills, then we can vote, then we can get involved, then we can change the system, right? And so, and it's disproportionately impacting the communities that challenge the status quo, that have long been impacted by racial discrimination and class discrimination and all sorts of different civil rights movements, right? And it's because our power is scaring those in charge, right? And they're trying to set a system where they're enriching themselves. They can further fund these systems to our disadvantage through public institutions and our tax dollars, but also push like a very dangerous ideology that erases communities that challenge them, or incarcerates those communities, or just keeps us like divided and uneducated and poor, right? So we see these fights on multiple fronts in education, right? We see efforts to harm workers' right to organize, partisan school board races, privatization of schools, erasing Black history, erasing LGBTQ history. The list goes on and on and on. And we would think these fights are separate, but they're actually one big fight, all funded by the same far-right billionaires that want to enrich themselves off of our public institutions by defunding and moving that money to private entities that they invest in. And they want to push their radical, dangerous ideology on us because they want to keep Floridians divided, uneducated, and taking away our economic prosperity and opportunity so that we can't fight back and that we can't flourish. So we're up against a Goliath, but people power will win.
Well, all this means is you've got to come back subsequent episodes, because I feel like we're not going to cover all of these. We're going to have to do one a week. No, this was great. But I if you could, just for folks that are fired up about education, because you got them all fired up, because you got me all fired up, any calls to action? Like, what can we do before we wrap up?
100%. Oh my goodness. There's so many amazing groups that are organizing around this issue. So if you're a student, there's absolutely a student like club organizing around this stuff. So join a registered student organization around a cause you care about and get involved. If you are a professor, the UFF, United Faculty of Florida, is leading a lot of this effort. If you're a worker, AFL-CIO, SEIU, your different labor unions are fighting on these issues. Groups like Florida Rising, Florida Immigrant Coalition, Faith in Florida, the Florida for All Coalition are leading these fights. I guarantee you, if there's an issue you care about, there is an organization that's on the ground doing it, and they need your support. Equality Florida, Planned Parenthood, these are old groups on the ground in the Capitol, day in and day out, organizing people and advocating for these causes that we care about. And that includes, you don't have to just go to the Capitol. You can find who your lawmaker is, go to myfloridahouse.gov, flsenate.gov, identify who your state lawmaker is, reach out to them. They're counting on you to think your voice does not matter. And I'm telling you, it does. Mm-hmm. It makes a huge difference. And so whether you can donate, you can do a lobby day or call your lawmaker, you can door knock, help register voters. There is a cause. I'll give one last sort of uplift to People Power for Florida, my sister's voter registration organization that is also organizing around college campuses and legislative session. And so please, visit People Power for Florida and get involved there. They are scared of our power, and that is why they've created a system to silence us, to censor us, to divide us, and to take away our prosperity. But, we are not going anywhere. This is our state. This is our money, and we are here to stay. So just really want to encourage folks not to get to just stand in your power and remind yourself that, this is our state, and we have every right to have a say in what they do with our money.
Hell yeah. Well, you heard it from Ida. Thank you so, so much. We will not give up the fight. And like I said earlier, I would love for you to come back. But for now,
I'd love to come back. Listen, if you just want me to yell about stuff, girl, call me up. Yeah.
Awesome.
Usually it's into the ether. So if I get to yell at y'all, I mean, cool.
Yep. Thank you so much, Ida.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for all that y'all do, and just keeping a watch on the shenanigans in the state capitol. So much of what they fear is us exposing and just shining a light. Yeah. So the work y'all do is so important, because people can't organize and we don't know what's going on. So keep up the good work.
Exactly.